little different this year, I'm sure you noticed. But we normally have 24 fire drills per year, and that's going to be 12 for the nursing side and then also 12 for the quarters as well. As far as med charts, if they're in that fire area, you want to get them out of the fire area. So if we have a fire in area B and we had the med charts down there at the nursing station, you want them, if at all possible, safely to do it, you want to get them into a area, non-fire area. And over in the quarters, it's going to be, you're just going to keep them in the med room. Okay. Everybody familiar with this? What's that for? Put them on the door. That's right. Where do they go on the door? Yeah, down on the bottom half. Over on the nursing side, we have little magnets here because we have the door frame protectors on it, which the magnets don't stick on, so we put magnets on. Over in the quarters, there are the metal frames. We just want to make sure you're on that lower, probably about that lower third. Now, one of the things I've seen during a fire drill, this has been years ago, we had a resident that refused to come out, and then when they came out of the room, when the staff came out, they still put the evacuation sticker on the door frame. Would that be correct? No. Only if that room is empty. Okay? But that's why we do drills. We learn. You say, okay, that's not how we want to do that. We learn from it better than on a drill than in the real deal. Do we really need to practice?
Yes.
Well, that was one of our water heaters a few years ago. Some flame shot. It was a gas water heater and malfunctioned, and the flames kind of come up around the side. Fortunately, it was quick enough and didn't set off any alarms or anything. But that's what happened. Now here's another. I don't know if those of you in the back can see this very well, but look at that spot right there. Can you see that little dark area? Now for those of you that were here during this time, shh, what do you think, the rest of you, what do you think that might have been from? It's a little burn mark right in there. Any guesses? Okay, that is room, I believe, 117. How many of you have noticed rooms 117 and 218 get a little toasty when the sun is shining bright? You ever notice that? Okay, take one of those nice bright days, a residence magnifying mirror sitting at just the right location, pointed in just the right direction. And all it did was it focused the sun onto the head of the bed. Enough that it started making it smoke. Someone went into the room and noticed the smoke, and so they said, pull the fire alarm. What section is room 18 in? Area A. So they said, pull the fire alarm. Someone down at the nurse's station pulled the fire alarm down there. What section is that in?
D.
Do we have a problem?
Yes.
Okay. Up until that time, I just assumed that the fire alarm would always be pulled in the section where the fire was. I saw how easily that could happen, so it's simply something we learned from. We need to be aware of it. One, if you do have to pull an alarm, you want to pull it in the section where the fire is. If not, then we need to make sure we communicate that once the alarm is pulled. Because what happened that day is people, that was on first, people on second floor are evacuating from what? Area B into Area A. Okay, so they were actually going above the fire instead of moving away from the fire. So, there again, live and learn. Fire alarm system, basically what you have is you just have smoke, heat, pool, water flow detectors, and we're going to have to talk about this guy, little guy, a little bit in a few minutes. But what happens is, it picks up a signal and it does a whole bunch of stuff. It sets off the alarms to alert us, it calls the alarm company, it calls the fire department, and sends a signal to these devices right here. We got 4 of them. One at each of the nurses' stations. The quarters is right outside the med room, and then we also have one on the sun porch. Up until that point, we had to do nothing. But now this is when we need to kick into gear. If you're licensed personnel, stand up. RN, LPN, any of you? All right, you got the task. What's your task if this alarm goes off?
You go into the box and see where it's at.
Right.
Announce it.
And to announce it, correct. The licensed personnel make the announcement. And with this phone, you can sit down now. You want to use page 3 because that's going to announce as much as you can over the facility overhead and the phones as well. What do you want to announce? You want to announce which wing it's in, which building. Is it the Shook? Is it the quarters? Is it the rehab center? You want to announce which floor it is. And if it's in the Shook side, you need to announce if it's area A or B. So here's what it looks like. We'll just zoom in on that a little bit closer so you can see. As you can see, it just don't lay it out for you just as slick as could be. You have to know what you're looking for. So there, that tells you it's a ground floor nursing and which area it's in. Okay, in the quarters, if we do have to evacuate due to fire, quarters are always going to go into the stairwell regardless of where the fire is in the facility. Nursing, you want to evacuate the fire area. So for example, if it's in area B on the ground floor, area B on the top floor is going to evacuate as well. You're going to evacuate into either area A or the quarters in that case. Ground floor, if it goes off if we have a ground floor fire, we want to evacuate the whole ground floor down here, both area A and B. Why might that be? We don't have the smoke doors to divide area A and B down here on ground floor. So if something goes off down here, we want to evacuate the whole area.
Where does it go? Where does everybody go down there?
Down here, you might have to go outside into the stairwell or over to the quarters. You know, since you're evacuating everything.
Outside? You can go.
Yeah, you could go outside if you needed to. I mean, get away from the fire. Is that what you're asking? Yeah. Normally, if during a drill, we'd probably maybe just go into the stairwell or into the quarters. But if we had to, I mean, hey, we can evacuate the building. Okay, water flow. Remember I said we needed to talk about that one guy a little bit? And that's because, this one right here, that's because I was here one night and the water flow went off. And it raised a situation that we needed to be aware of. Here's why. Over in the quarters, we have a water flow for each floor. The bottom one's the ground downstairs in the boiler room, and then we have a sensor for each floor. However, in the Shook, what do we have?
One sensor.
How many sensors? One. And then if you notice, once it goes through the sensor, and then it branches out, where before in the quarters it branched out, and then we had a sensor on each floor. So if we have water flow over here, the fire alarm isn't going to be able to tell us which floor it's on. All it's going to do is tell us it's over here in the Shook facility. And that's one of those things where I happened to be here at night when it went off falsely because we were working on the system during the day, that I discovered, hey, we need to be aware of that. And basically what that does, if you notice, we have the sprinkler heads, and so what happens is they have heat sensors or heat sensitive things on it that if it gets too hot, they open up and allow the water to flow. And then that's when water starts flowing through the pipe that triggers that. So basically what we have to do is announce that we have water flow on the Shook side, search for the water or the fire, and at that point make the announcement, and then we're ready to go like we normally would be. Okay, quickly. R for race.
Rescue.
Rescue.
Alarm.
Alarm.
Confine.
Contain or confine. And E.
Evacuate.
Evacuate or extinguish. There again on the fire video, I'm sure you noticed, depends on if you can extinguish safely without getting trapped, then you do that. Old time, if you ever go into a building and you see a blue light, that could indicate a fire extinguisher. We used to have those until a few years ago. And now if you're looking for a fire extinguisher, just look down the hall for the bubbled out panel on the wall. CO detectors, Shook side, they are now tied into the fire alarm, so if one of those would go off, it's gonna set off the fire alarm. Quarters, we still have like 3 CO detectors that are not. And they are in the dining room, the laundry room, and then down in the boiler room. Disaster preparedness plan, what's new? Just quickly on that, they are, our new disaster preparedness is more community-based. It's no longer just us as a facility. We're required to prepare for wider area events like storms and that type of thing. And we have to be able to coordinate with other facilities. For example, if we have a plan that says we're going to call ambulance service to help us transport patients, that's okay for just our facility, but what if it's a wide event and everybody else has the same plan? Is that be an issue? So that's what doing those kind of drills really help us with, to prepare for that type of thing. So some of the things are, we have to have risk assessments, we do after action reports, we use the incident command structure, which is more like the government uses when they go into a disaster area. So it helps the communication process. And so as you can see, it's a little more involved than just our facility nowadays. There can be a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes. And just to point out, we are in our survey window. One thing we often get dinged for, if you notice, this wheelchair is keeping the door from closing. Anytime if one of those surveyors go through, you should be able to go into any room, pull the door closed without anything obstructing it. If there's anything in that doorway obstructing it, they can give us a tag. And it's one of those things, you can clear it, 5 minutes later, there can be something there. And it could be as simple as a wheelchair parked next to the door, and the wheel's just out far enough like this, keeping it from the door from closing. Is there anything else that you have like explained further? We good? Okay. Now we got some exciting stuff. We get to put out some fires. And what we're going to do is, just to keep us from having to wipe down all the fire extinguishers between each use, there should be gloves back there. I think we have all different sizes, so whatever size you need, just make sure you put on a pair of gloves, and then Randy will take it from here and tell you how to put out a fire.
All right, come get your gloves. Anyone who's allergic to vinyl, we do have the nitrate as well. Is it indoors or outdoors? Is it indoors or outdoors?
It's right back here.
Oh, that's
Yeah, it's the electronic version inside.
Oh.
So you don't even have to go out.
That's why I keep kicking my legs out and kicking them back and forth.
That's nice. Are those your grandchildren?
Yes.
Oh, you have two now.
Oh, actually, we got 3. Yeah, this is our oldest one, and this is the next to the oldest, and then that's his brother that was just born here in June. And then we're supposed to have our granddaughter coming in February.
Adult. Oh, that'd be nice. Yeah, what's the name?
This is Trey. It's actually, that's his nickname. And so, and then that's Andrew, and then that's Caleb. Yeah, Ernie Eugene Burt is Trey's.
Yeah.
We always
You
call
always call him Trey, yeah.
He's actually the 3rd generation.
Wow.
So that's how he came up with Trey.
You did watch the video too.
Where's your company name? Save my spot. Mine was $9.97.
Hello, everybody. How are we doing today? Randy with Jones Fire, here to obviously do fire extinguisher training. How many people have done this before in the past? So several, maybe half of you. How about anybody that hasn't done it?
We just wasn't videoing.
Any hands that haven't done this way? Okay. Just to explain a little bit so you have a better understanding of how it works. There is going to be a fire on the screen, and it does actually interact with this fire extinguisher. So whenever we light it off and the fire's actually getting larger, you'll hear it beep, it'll make a sound. That's when you can grab the fire extinguisher and start to put out the fire. To operate a fire extinguisher, if you ever have the choice between one that has a hose or one that doesn't have a hose, grab the one with the hose, because the fire extinguisher always needs to remain in its upright position. So if you have a hose, now you can spray it anywhere you want and keep the fire extinguisher this way. You turn it this way and it's not going to do anything for you for the most part. So just keep that in mind. Obviously, you always want to grab the right fire extinguisher, but you learned that on the video. Whenever you're doing the actual pin, so as we pull in, squeeze, and sweep, we're going to pull this pin out so that way this handle can work. When you pull this pin out, sometimes it's a little hard.